currently involved in several Middle East companies and non-profit organizations, and had initiated and led a variety of high-profile and successful telecom companies in the United States, the Middle East, and Africa. Charles is the co-founder and managing director of MADA Communications, a leading wireless data and voice operator in a number of countries across the Middle East and Africa. MADA is a joint venture with Zain, a pioneering mobile operator across the Middle East and Africa too. MADA is also a founding member of the regional cable network RCN, the first terrestrial fiber optic system bridging the east to west from the Middle East Gulf region to Europe. Charles holds a Bachelor of Engineering degree from George Mason University, Virginia, US. Please welcome with me Mr. Charles Hage.
Good morning. Well, don't worry, I will not be talking about telecom today. So we will be talking about a subject that you have heard about, a very dear subject for all of us. The title is Lebanon Demography. You have heard a lot of facts, a lot of myth about demography in Lebanon. Why we are interested in the demography? As most of you come from different countries, when we talk about democracy, we talk about numbers. There is no other way to translate democracy but by voting. And when we talk about votes, we talk about numbers. When we talk about Lebanon, the home of 18 religions, it is also important to know that unless we maintain certain demography in this country, Lebanon as a pluralistic society will not exist. Then Lebanon will become like any other Middle Eastern country that you know today. What I would like to share with you today, a few numbers about Lebanon demography since inception until today. And together we're going to work to see how we can correct this shift in demography. So, in 1860, that's when we had, under the Ottoman Empire, there was a debate between whether we will do Mount Lebanon as a Mutsarfi or we do Lebanon as we know it today. Looking at the numbers then, the major event that we're going to talk about today that affected the Lebanese demography are the immigration 1860 to 1914, the famine and the prosecution 1914-1918, I'm sorry for the typo, the civil war in 1975, and the naturalization law in 1998. Those are the major events that affected Lebanese demography. Go ahead. So as we mentioned, under the Ottoman Empire, there was a debate whether we do Lebanon as a Mutsarfi or we do the Mutsarfi of Mount Lebanon. Looking at the numbers then, this is the Lebanon that we know today. The population then was 487,000. Just remember this number. Mount Lebanon was 270,000. 82% were Christian and 18% were Muslim. Then they decided to go with Mount Lebanon instead of Lebanon as we know it today. Today, in 2006, after reviewing the numbers, the population was 4,550,000, divided as follows. We have 65% Muslim and 35% Christians. So, if we look at the 1860, we were 65% Christian, 35% Muslim. In 2006, we are the opposite, 65% Muslim and 35% Christians. Why? What happens? Why this shift in demography? Is it because of the birth rate? Any of you know? Why the difference? Why the shift? Immigration. Immigration. But in 1914 or after World War I, we had a special event, and we're going to talk about it now. Again, 2006, 1860 to 2006, this is the major shift. You would see 64% were Christians, 36% were Muslim. In 2006, you will see the opposite. Okay. So, immigration was the answer. Wave one was prior to 1860. The immigration was limited then. Few people immigrated, mainly clergies. They go to Rome, to Europe to study and come back in here, and few merchants that were traveling to Europe, to Marseille, to Egypt, but it was very limited. Wave two was from 1860 to 1900. This is as a result of problems we had in Mount Lebanon, whereby 10,000 people died because of the conflict between the Maronite and the Druze. Again, it was limited immigration. When we talk about limited immigration, we're talking about few thousands. The boom in immigration came in 1900 to 1914. 1900 to 1914, unfortunately, Mount Lebanon was really living on what we call the trade of the silk. You've all heard stories about the silk trade from Mount Lebanon to the world. Unfortunately, and due to the Opium War, if any of you studied history, you would know that Europe, England invaded China, and they liberalized the market back there, and that the trade between China and Europe boomed, and the number one trade was silk. So the made in China in 1900 to 1914 killed the economy in Lebanon. Just put it in perspective, we had more than 15,000 people per year immigrated from Lebanon to the world. When we're talking about this size, 15,000 per year, with a 500, 600,000 population, that means that we have third of the population then, again, third, imagine from your countries, you have a third of the population immigrated. And this is really the base for all our immigrants, and that's what we call the forefathers. Let's pause a little bit. Tell me, who is in here a third generation Lebanese? That means their grandfather or their grandfather came from Lebanon. Any of you?
From Latin America.
Go ahead, tell me. Third generation? Your grandfather came from Lebanon? Yes. What about you?
We actually came from Latin America. I can also from Mexico. We are fourth generation because our grandfathers came because of this moment.
And all of them came between this period. That's what I'm trying to relate for you. Everybody immigrated. I'm going to do that. Everybody. So you had this number of, this is the wave one. Most of this went to North and South America. It's on. Hello? Nothing's working today. It is on. Hello? Hello? Okay, sorry. So the wave 3 really is the base for our immigration. And we will talk about the numbers later on. So the first high immigration was done then, and it was to North and South America. Wave 2 was between 1915 and 1916, and really 1918 again. This is because of the embargo and the famine that hit this part of the world. Are you guys aware about what happened 100 years ago in this part of the world, in Mount Lebanon? Have you read anything about the famine and the massacres that happened in this part of the world? Anyone, any of you? You have heard about the 100-year anniversary for the Armenian massacres, right? Very little was spoken about what happened in Mount Lebanon. Let me share with you what happened with Mount Lebanon then. More than 200,000 people died in Mount Lebanon then, almost half of the population who remained in this country. What that means? You had a third who immigrated prior to 1914, 1916, and guess what? 80% of the people immigrated were Christians. You had 50% of the people remained in Lebanon, died because of embargo and famine. So we were left with a third of the population in country to continue on. Let me read for you a small paragraph of a lady who was a British national, married to a Lebanese, immigrated to Australia, came back with her husband to Lebanon, and you will have, a copy of this book for you to read and for you to remember about what happened then. All along the road, there are bones of poor people who have been starved to death or have been robbed and killed. A friend of mine also went to Beirut, and by the side of the road there were the bones of a man who had died of hunger. His poor sister had tried to bury him, but she had no strength. The foxes had eaten his flesh, and all that was left were the bones. Such scenes are an everyday occurrence. Miriam Busader, Saturday, April 6, 1918. I advise you to read this book, only for you to understand what went into this country and why this shift in demography. Carry on. So, to sum up, a third of the population immigrated due to economic reasons, again made in China. Latin America, South America, United States, Canada were the recipients of what we call the 1900, the big immigration. Third of the population died. More than 200,000 people died in Mount Lebanon. Of course, third remained. After World War I, the immigration was very limited. We had close to 3,000 immigrants every year until 1975, until the war broke out. So, the third of the population continued. We had the Ottoman Empire, and then the French came over. 1920, there was a declaration of Lebanon. They did the first, go back. Yes.
Here?
Well, no, keep this one. So they did the first census in 1920. Our partners in the country did not like the numbers. They waited 10 years, and then they have done the 1932 census. In the 1932 census, you will see that we had close to 800,000 people living in Lebanon, and we had close to 255,000 who were living abroad. The people living in Lebanon, we were almost divided equally 50-50. That was by design. In 1920, the numbers were not dissimilar. The Christians were close to 55%. Our partners in this country, with the French, they were able to bring a lot of families and place them in Beirut and in the north to have equilibrium. Why we are talking about these numbers? The 1932 records are the records used by the government today to determine if somebody is eligible for the citizenship in Lebanon. Unfortunately, when we received these numbers, the agreement was that whoever lived in this country will have the right for citizenship. And the people who are living abroad, the brothers and sisters, the uncles, the grandfathers of the people living in Lebanon who lived abroad, did not automatically get the citizenship. Actually, they said, if you want the citizenship, you have to apply for it. Now remember, 1932, there was no Lebanese government. So people, what would have to do to apply? Your grandfather went in front of the French embassy or consulate, applied for citizenship. So out of the 254, we had close to 92,000 applied for citizenship. They actually went into the French embassy requesting their citizenship. They have done this to preserve for you the right for the citizenship. 92,000 applied. The Lebanese government granted them the citizenship. Unfortunately, did not advise them that they became Lebanese. So the people who applied died not knowing that they are Lebanese. Their grandchildren doesn't know that they have the right for citizenship. And this is one of the main reasons why the Maronite Foundation was established. After finding these facts, we knew that there are a lot of people their citizenship was stolen from them. And whether it was done on purpose or negligence, the result is the same. No one wanted those people living abroad to participate in our daily life in Lebanon. And this is why together we're going to work on finding those people. I know it's too many numbers for early morning, but these are the facts for you to take, to read, and to understand, because this is the basis for everything we are doing at the foundation. We want you to understand that, this is not just, a rich man hobby. Just we would like to bring people from abroad, to bring them in here. We go chase people living abroad. This is really, the registration process makes the big difference in the future of this country. It is with your help that we can do this. Unless we go and find the Lebanese abroad, ask them to register, the demography will eat us. During the Civil War, as you all know, we had more than 800,000 immigrants, with 200,000 died. The 800,000 also represent 25% of the population then. So we had two major immigration waves. After the war, before World War I, after the Civil War in Lebanon, where at each time we lost between 25 and 30% of the population. The third event that really helped unbalance the situation. So it's not enough to have the first wave of immigration. The famine and the people died after World War I. The Civil War, some people thought, why don't we push it a little bit further? Unfortunately, the government in Lebanon in 1998 went and nationalized close to 200,000 non-Lebanese, with no Lebanese blood whatsoever. Why they did this? To help unbalance the situation even further. 150,000 Muslim, 50,000 Christians. And if we dig into the numbers even a little bit more, we will see that the 50,000 Christians, 4,300 were only Maronites, and the majority of whom were women and nuns. So it's clear whoever designed this, whoever worked on this, whoever approved this, had one thing in his mind. One, to continue with the unbalance between Christian and Muslim. Two, to really make the Maronite community smaller in size. Now, unfortunately, we're talking about the third part is the negligence. People who are allowed or who has the right for citizenship means your cousins, your relatives, your friends are not registering. Means when somebody is getting married, is not registering his marriage, and when they have their kids, they are not registering the kids. Only 20% of the Lebanese Christian community worldwide are registering their marriages and their birth and their childbirth. While the Muslims are registering close to 95%. How do we know this? If we look at our records in Lebanon, we will see that 46%. Stay where we were before, please. 46% of male between the age of 30 and 69 are still single. While the average in the world, 20% are not married, of male will not get married. So you can see the gap between 20 and 46%. Well, if we look at the Muslim male, you would see that 24% of them are married. This is not normal. Why is not normal? Because the Christian men are not registering their marriages and their birth rate, and the birth and the childbirth. If we continue with the same trend, will be the future of Lebanon. Look at this. The birth rate of the last 4 years in Lebanon, we are registering 15,000 per year as Christians. Muslims are registering 48,000. We are 24%, they are 76%. Now I know I cannot ask my wife to bring more kids. We cannot ask you to bring a lot of kids. But what we can do, we can together identify, help, promote registration. Why? Because for every person that we register today, equal to 3 newborn. Because the person will get married and will have kids. So it's 1 for 3. Instead of going and working on increasing birth rates, we have a pool of 2 million people today that we can ask them to register. If together we register 5,000 per year, this will keep us at 35% in Lebanon. This is how important is the job of the foundation or the mission of the foundation. This is why we need you to help us to promote this idea. So, we go back to the number that you have heard so many times. How many Lebanese are living abroad? If you remember, we talked about the third and the third. Third immigrated, third died, third remained in Lebanon. The third who remained in Lebanon, in 2006, they were counted for 4,550,000. It is only natural the third that lived abroad, and since abroad you are allowed to marry you are open to marry, or the most probable you marry from non-Lebanese, the number will double. So, we believe there are 9 million people out there, they have Lebanese blood, either from the mother or from the father's side. Out of 2 million, well, we have talked about these numbers. Let's see together how we can work on improving these numbers. First, I want to take 2 minutes and see if any question you might have about the Academy and about why you're here. Do you know why you're here? Does anybody know why you're here? Is it just luck that you won a lottery and you came to Lebanon? Please, tell me. Back to the roots. Good. Is it because you are privileged you're here? Because what I believe, it's your love for Lebanon that brought you here. Because we all know what you had to go through the Academy. You had the courses, you had the tests, and then you were 3 out of 1,000 plus to choose 50 of you. Tell me, why you're here? Anybody can tell me why he's here? Nobody knows why he's here. Too many beers? What do you think? Next. Front row. Here. Why you're here?
To be able to help augment the ratio of the Christian versus the Muslims in Lebanon, and to provide awareness abroad to people that they're allowed to register as Lebanese.
George Diab from Toronto, Canada. So we should coming here, we live the experience of Lebanon, and then when we go back, we show people how wonderful it was. and we get them to want to come here at least, and then probably when they see how beautiful it is, they want to be part of it.
The purpose of our trip is to promote more our Lebanese roots, to know what's the real meaning of being Maronite, and to be real ambassadors in our own country of what we live here.
Go ahead.
Hello, Bruno from France. So I will answer you first. For me, it's to fully know about Lebanese culture in order to spread it. I mean, especially with people, among people who don't know at all about Lebanese culture, because in France there are many people who forgot, who decided not to live as Lebanese. So it's very different from other Lebanese diaspora, I think. But I have also a question for you. You spoke about major events. My question is, what about conditions in Lebanon? Because I think that today, apart from major events, people are living. I mean, we provide high standard. You provide high standard of education here in Lebanon. So mainly also with Western values, Western country values, among others. So don't you think that these values make people live when they see conditions of living in Lebanon? I mean, the difference between, okay, we are very clever, we can do many things, but I don't have electricity. So this kind, it's just an example. I know it's very cliche. So for me, maybe today for the new generations, this will be the problem.
Well, immigration was mainly because of economic reasons. You're right. And we didn't talk about the recent immigration. Keep in mind that 40% of the Lebanese population today live abroad. So, yes, we almost have a failed state, but you still see a lot of people in here. Our strength is our problem. Immigration is our strength. Make no mistake about it. Without immigration, Lebanon would not have existed. If it wasn't for your grandfather, for your father, and maybe for yourself, Lebanon would not have existed. The money coming from immigrants represent 30% of GDP. This is not a small number. Yes, we are small in numbers. Yes, we are a small nation. But trust me, we have the greatest people on earth. This is to answer you. Now, why we don't arrive to build in a country like everywhere else, at least to look like us, if I understood your question. We learn about values at home, we learn about values in universities. Why don't we apply it in our public service? Correct? The simple answer is I don't know. I wish I know. We have the oldest democracy in this part of the world. Yet, we cannot agree on how to pick up the garbage from the streets. We talk about pluralistic society. Yes, the Muslim of Lebanon is different from any Muslim in the neighborhood. And you are witnessing and you are seeing what's going on in that part of the world. Lebanon, relatively, is a very safe place to be in. Otherwise, you will not be here. You remember, we came out from the 25 years of war. We had the Syrian occupation. Nobody will try to let you do what they don't know, or they don't know what to do at home. So we inherited a lot. It's not an excuse. We should build a new country. Your fathers, your grandfathers helped build one of the largest economies around the world. Look at the Brazil economy, look at the Mexican economy, look at the US economy, look at the Australian economy, look at New Zealand, in Europe. I'm sure we will find a way one day to build a country in here.
Anthony from Canada. I just had a question. You said that 2 million people are eligible for to become Lebanese abroad. How conservative are these numbers? Because when you see the estimates, it's somewhere in the tens of millions. We're reading it online still.
As I mentioned, if you follow, this is a very good question. When we talked in 1932, there are two sets of records. You had the people who are living in Lebanon, and you had the people who are living abroad. So you had a third who were living abroad, and around 280,000, and we had 800,000 living here. So the 280,000 who are living abroad, we had 90,000 of them applied for citizenship. So if we do the math, the growth rates, those would be equate to 800 to 1 million. And then we had the other waves of immigration, especially the one after the post-war, close to 25% of the population left, 800,000. 20% of those people are registered. Because we looked at the male between the age of 39 and 69, and we see that they're still single. If you do the math, you come up with the 2 million that are eligible. What do you mean eligible? That their names were registered in the 1932 books, and they are male descendants. You follow what I'm saying? This is what we determined, that those 2 million are eligible for citizenship today. All they have to do is show up at the embassies and apply for it.
Ali Matar from Australia. Just two-part question that I've just been sort of dealing with myself to try to understand this process. The first thing is, I understand that there's 2 million people that, for instance, that were eligible still to sign up. But what are the political implications of boosting these numbers? Say we do sign up all 2 million of these, maybe 90% of which have no interest or no understanding of the politics of the culture of Lebanon. What effect pragmatically does it have on the political landscape by actually boosting these numbers, which are just numbers, rather than actually boosting or promoting anything that they're going to want to do in Lebanon? And I guess the second part of the question is, philosophically, what would your view be about increasing influence of a large number of Lebanese immigrants on a landscape of Lebanon which they're not living in? So there might be 80% of Christians out there, but actually there are 70% of Muslim people living in here. And for them to be determining the politics or the landscape of the people living in here. I was just wondering what your view would be.
Excellent question. Let's answer the first part. To boost the registration, this is, these are the real stars of Lebanon. Why would you think they went and they passed a law in 1998 and registered non-Lebanese? Everybody was trying to work out the numbers. So they have passed this, knowing that if the Lebanese decided to register, and the majority of them are Christians, all their work in here would go into vain. What I'm trying to say. To boost these numbers, we have to pass a new law to allow people who immigrated and who lived here in Lebanon before and did not apply for citizenship, to allow them and give them the right to apply for citizenship. But we want to boost the registration. And I don't know if your question was there, to boost the number or to boost the registration. And I believe you want to boost the registration. Let me give you an example of Australia office. For the past 5 years, we have processed more than 20,000 applications. 20,000 applications in Australia alone. In our math, how many newborn would be equal to? 60,000. The average birth rate, remember this, was 15,000 per year for Christians living in Lebanon and abroad. You understand what I'm trying to say? 15,000 Christian newborn we have every year for all registered Lebanese Christians. 20,000 would equate to 60,000 for 4 years. Now, we don't tell this to our wives. They will stop bringing babies. This is how important it is to work on these numbers. The second question, if the number of people that are eligible to vote will start voting and they will have a negative impact, at least from somebody else's point of view, on what's going on in Lebanon. You have heard about the $7 billion that comes from our diaspora to Lebanon. Are you telling me if we increase this number by another million, so we can have a $12 to $14 billion of money coming to Lebanon, will have a negative impact on Lebanon? If the people that have lived abroad and have a better experience from the people who live here, who cannot manage to pick up the garbage from the street, I think nothing but positive will come from those people. We are not worried about increasing the number of people who are living abroad and participate in our daily life here. We want together to work on establishing Lebanon as a spiritual land for Maronite. We want them to have this address with them. Questions and then I pass.
My name is Anthony Nassif from Toronto, Canada. I have two questions with respect to what you're saying. Okay. First question is, if women were allowed to pass down Lebanese citizenship, do you think that would increase the Christian population in Lebanon, or would it backfire and further increase the Muslim population as a result? That's my first question. And the second. Okay, so it would only benefit the Christians. I'm saying if women could pass down citizenship because they're yes. Would it help the Christians more or the Muslims more?
We have in Lebanon close to, if we pass the law today, 350,000 Palestinians will get citizenship.
I see. So it's better not to change it and keep the law the way it is.
Unfortunately, unless we have a mechanism in place where we can mobilize all the people living abroad, married to non-Lebanese, to register at the same time, you have an automatic, because the Palestinians in Lebanon, they're not allowed to work or not allowed to own flats. So you will have in less than a year a wave of 350,000 Palestinians.
Well, what if you're a woman, you can marry anyone except for a Palestinian or Syrian and still pass it down? Would that work?
Then you have to face with the Syrian issue.
Okay. Well, that's my first question.
And a human rights thing. So this subject is very complicated, and it's not of our subject, of our topic today.
Okay. My second question is that your math says that for every one that you register, you get 3 new Lebanese Christians.
Equate to it, yes.
What if we're all perfect and we register all the Christians abroad? Do you really think we can equate to the Muslim population? Because they have such a high birth rate. They have 4 wives, each one has like 12 kids, and they have such a high birth rate. I'm not joking. They have huge families, so we can't match the birth rate of the Islamic population. So
I answered it. Muslim having higher birth rate than Christians is not a true statement. Demography in Lebanon is related to geography, it's not related to religion. The Christian who lives in the Bekaa or in agriculture area, they have as many kids as the Muslim, and vice versa. The Muslim who lives in Beirut, who lives in the suburbs, have the same family. So the Muslim of Lebanon is different. There are a few exceptions where people marry more than one wife, but this is not the norm in Lebanon. How many of you know a Muslim that's married more than one wife? Very little. It's not the Lebanese culture. And again, I need you to know, the Muslim of Lebanon is totally different from any Muslim you will meet in this region. Please.
Johnny Jaj, I'm in Australia. I just want to go back to Eli's question, actually. I don't think you fully answered it. So what were the actual benefits, though, of increasing the Christian percentage in the world? And what is basically the repercussions of the Muslims being higher? Is that going to affect our seat at the Jamhuriyya? Is that going to affect maybe one day? Are you scared that if the Muslim population is so high, that might change the whole process so that the leader of the army might be Sunni? Can they have that power later on to change it? Is there a risk that we're going to lose our foot place basically in the political game in Lebanon? And so that they can say, hold on a second, we're 95% in the world now. So because the Christians are only 5%, why do they still have the seat? Why do they still have the army? Can they do that? That's the scare, right? That's what we hope, try to, I guess, stay away from. We don't want that to happen. So.
While we avoid to talk about politics at the Maronite Foundation, because really we have no political agenda. Yes, we are a Maronite Foundation. We're here to serve all people. Now, it happened that the diaspora, 80% of them who are not registered, 80% plus are Christians. Our aim is for those Lebanese who left from 20 years, 30 years to register. The people who left after the war, after the Civil War, 20% of them only registering their birth rates and their marriages. This is a crime. It's not the fault of the Muslim. If we do not claim Lebanon, somebody else would. Tell me, why would your uncles, your friends, your relatives, what reason they have not registering their marriages and their birth rates? Can anybody tell me why? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Joanne. I'm from Sydney, Australia. In Sydney, in Australia, we have two types of Lebanese. The ones that came in the 1890s, the ones that came on the boats and registered ages ago. And we have the ones that came post-war, 75, 80s, okay? We have a negative image in Australia. Not a lot of us want to be associated with being Lebanese. I personally moved out of Sydney and worked in Canberra, the capital, for 3-4 years. No one knew anything about who Lebanese was. The first question I get asked in Canberra, which is our capital city, is, you're Lebanese, why aren't you wearing the hijab? There's an ignorance about it. So we're not, I suppose the whole Western society, especially where we are, we have a negative.
Amen. Our Father,
and correct me, the people coming from Latin and South America. The brand name, I Am Lebanese, it is so valuable. If you are from Lebanon, if you were the doctor, that means you're one of the best doctors. If you were a lawyer, that means you're one of the best lawyers. If you were, in manufacturing, that means you are the best manufacturer. That means you are an honest man, you are a hard worker, and you have values, Lebanese values. That's the brand name, I Am Lebanese, that established by their forefathers. Yes, we have a lot of work to do in Australia. Similar to the grandfathers that came before. We have to keep that image. Why do you think you were here today? And you have all these great speakers.
Well, personally, I want to be able to bring the pride back to being Lebanese.
But look at all the good speakers you had. And you have another one coming now, and we're taking his time. Don't you think they're proud of what they have done? The people who are living in London, people who are living in Zurich, or people living in the United States, or everywhere else? Being Lebanese you should be proud of it, because this is the land of Saint Charbel. This is the land of Rafah. This is the land, you know, you have a great history, starting by the Phoenicians, coming back to Khalil Gibran. We exported the Christian values to the world. We are working together with the foundation now on establishing what we call on the footstep of Jesus. This is a country that was blessed by Jesus. Let's not forget this. We don't learn this in history. We learn about everything in history, but about the fact that Jesus came to Lebanon. We are the first democracy in this part of the world. Just remember, women used to vote in this country before it was allowed to vote, before she was allowed to vote in the United States. We have all the basics to be proud. Remember, take Australia out. The brand name, I am Lebanese, it's something that you can walk with your head straight. So you will be passing your kids a brand name that will work anywhere around the world, and people will treat him with dignity.
Carolina from Mexico. So if my mom is Lebanese and my dad is not, why can I get the citizenship? Because I think there are many people here like me.
For the mothers that live abroad Lebanon, not inside Lebanon.